Costello.
Speaker, I rise on behalf of New Zealand First to speak on the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi Bill. I acknowledge that our leader, the Deputy Prime Minister, is wanting to be here but unfortunately is boarding a plane as we speak. I'm honoured to be able to give this contribution, and I want to reflect on what it is we are here to debate. Despite the absence of any judge or academic being able to clearly define the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, the ACT Party believed it could. Despite what has been suggested in the purpose of the bill, a legislation would have taken us back into the courts, which is the last thing this country needs. To put this issue before the courts is exactly what we needed to avoid. And alarmingly, there appears in the political posturing this bill has brought to this House, no thought was given to the turmoil should a referendum fail. We saw the kākoi when it was clearly known the bill would not pass, the political noise and the upsets that it created around communities. All this posturing and political point scoring that distracted us from the real work we need to do as a nation. We have heard that in the forming of a coalition government there are compromises. There have been compromises, and New Zealand First knows that because we have been part of those coalition agreements on many occasions. And we know that we can agree to disagree on many aspects. And even if we agree, which we don't, and even if it were to pass, and it won't, a subsequent Parliament could change the definitions, and so the cycle would continue. The unintended consequence of this legislation, something that does not need legislation. And what would the courts do with this legislation? It is plain wrong to take the responsibility of determining the role of Te Tiriti o Waitangi from the highest court in the land to the judiciary, which would have been the outcome of this bill. Even Sir Kenneth Keith, the lawyer's lawyer, pointed out that it is undesirable for constitutional issues to get settled by courts. And if we look back to our history, Sir Raparana Ngata was a strong advocate for protecting the treaty from being ratified by Parliament. And I find it abhorrent that the mention of Sir Raparana Ngata's name is treated with such contempt in this House.
All right.
Let us do what is right.
The balance of the speech will be heard in silence. And there are members down there who have been pushing it pretty hard who won't be staying for the balance of the debate if they keep on interfering.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let us do what is right for us as a nation. When I last spoke on this bill at its first reading, I talked of the dignity of this House. I talked of the obligation we all have in this House to ensure that this esteemed debating chamber is not censored. There is nothing to fear from challenging ideas and presenting different positions. This House, Mr. Speaker, is strong enough to withstand fractious debate as long as we protect the duty we have to honour the rules that guide us and respect the decisions that are made. New Zealand First may not support this bill being brought to this House, but we support our democracy and know we can challenge the status quo and debate something contentious. That is the democracy we must protect. The principles of the Te Tiriti o Waitangi Bill is one such contentious debate. It seeks to legislatively define the principles. The premise being that this bill will fill a silence on who we are as a nation. It would deliver unity and resolve the debate in perpetuity. As I've said, perhaps that is not what we would achieve. Mr. Speaker, New Zealand First has the longest uninterrupted position on the place the Treaty of Waitangi has in our collective identity as a nation. It is in the signing of this treaty that our nation was formed. It started our journey and forged our identity. It is through the forming of our nation that we came together as a people, over time, not instantaneously on the 6th of February 1840. We had much to resolve. We still do. Our iwi at the time did not consider themselves unified as one people, and in ceding sovereignty, no impact was immediately felt. In fact, very little change, as our history will attest, immediately after the treaty was signed. But we did change. This Parliament was established, laws were passed, and our great country flourished. One nation, one flag, one people, that is who we are. New Zealand First has been challenged. I have been challenged as to why this bill is not supported. Our message is simple. The foundation of our country was the treaty that brought us together, not principles that were loosely fashioned in an effort to expedite settlement processes and divisive interactions between Māori and the Crown. Defining principles is not a debate that takes us forward or brings us together. To take us forward, we need to understand in legislation, in each legislation, what is the obligation we owe to each other as citizens to give effect to the intentions of each law. In particular, how democratic governments respond to issues raised by Māori, not the courts or tribunals, but by Māori to their elected representatives. What will deliver the outcomes needed to benefit our communities? That is what New Zealand First has committed to delivering. Not entrenching a reinvention of the treaty and what it means to New Zealand, but providing a clear path forward to a better nation. We will deliver a pathway to economic prosperity for iwi, to allow them to be unshackled from a narrative of grievance. Mr. Speaker, I have spent years defending our rights as New Zealanders to be treated respectfully and equally before the law. Whatever journey brought us to this nation, we are owed the same rights, and this House has a duty to ensure that is what our laws provide. We do not need new legislation in this space. We need to clarify, simplify and verify our existing laws. To do this, we need to recognise and respect an honest account of our history. Importantly, an honest account of our history will make sure we are not oppressed by the racism of low expectations. When we can look to our tupuna for what they achieved, we can silence the narrative that we are a nation of two peoples. When we look to our tupuna, we can understand what personal responsibility means, what honour and dignity means, what sacrifice and hard work means. We can be aspirational, not divisive. This is the legacy that is to be honoured. I have spoken at the first reading of this bill about New Zealand First leader and Deputy Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Winston Peters' reverence in speaking about our great Māori leaders who forged the path for a better New Zealand. Sir Raparana Ngata, Sir Peter Buck, Sir Maui Pomare, Sir James Carroll, all shared the position that there were no principles to the treaty, and this remains New Zealand First position. It is under the shared knowledge and understanding of our history that New Zealand First has remained committed to the purpose of the treaty. As Dame Whina Cooper said, we signed the treaty to become one people. We cannot allow the treaty to be weaponised, and we cannot allow it to take a place that will forever position us as New Zealanders in conflict with each other. As a result, that is the very antithesis of what was intended by the bill. This Parliament must hold fast to our democracy and retain supremacy over the direction we take as our country. New Zealand First knows this means clarifying our existing legislation. New legislation that entrenches a definition of the principles is not the solution for our country. It is not an end position. It would be a launching platform for those who gain political relevance by driving a narrative of victimhood in the absence of doing the hard work to improve outcomes. New Zealand First is the party of practical action. We know what New Zealanders are calling for, and it is not more noise, but a pathway to first world wages, top-class education, a warm, dry home and access to healthcare when they need it. We talk much in the House about what divides us, our quantum of Māori, whether we have a vanilla lens or who is qualified to speak for who. That is what oppresses us. That is what deprives our future generations of achieving their potential. Mr. Speaker, it is time to put this bill to rest. We have work to be done and serious decisions to be made. New Zealand First is up for the challenges that are ahead. We know we need to work effectively together and how important it is that Parliament is respected. Mr Speaker, if New Zealand First believed this bill had merit, we would have supported it. We do not. Mr Speaker, New Zealand First does not commend this bill to the House.